one issue I hear complaints about. So Senator Eldridge invited me to join him on his committee, which we did together just the other day. So it's great to be back. And I really appreciate all of you showing up today and the hosts for hosting this event. It matters to show up to stuff like this, right? I mean, we have learned a lot of lessons from this last presidential election. We learn lessons every day from this president, unfortunately. One of the lessons I took from this election, and this is something President Obama talked about in his farewell address, if you remember that, feels like years ago at this point, but it's this notion that our liberties and our democracy and the strength of our communities, these fundamental American privileges, are not self-fulfilling. They need us. They need us to breathe life into them and to protect them and be vigilant about them. And we cannot take them for granted. And the good news is I've been campaigning for governor for the last almost 1 year now. I've been going to lots of stuff like this, and there are people showing up who've never been to anything like it before. And there are indivisible groups and stronger together groups and all kinds of grassroots organizations filled with people, many of whom have never been involved and politically active before, who are fired up and energized and wanting to do something. And that is good. And we need to build on that energy and sustain it. A lot of it right now is focused on Washington for good reason. We've got a president taking us backwards every single day. And we need to be focused there, and we need to fight there. But we also need to recognize the best we're going to do in Washington right now is hold the line. And we are moving backwards, and the question is how far. The only place we're going to move forward is here, in Massachusetts. And moving forward, making progress, that is a fundamental part of who we are too. My entire life, I've been really fortunate. I've been surrounded by people who've proven our potential for progress. The very first time I ever got politically active, I went to work on this was a summer before my senior year in college. I went to work on a campaign for a guy named John Glenn. He was running for re-election to the United States Senate in 1992, back in Ohio, and I was running all over the state, handing stuff out at county fairs, and there are 88 county fairs in Ohio, so I was very busy. But a couple of times I actually got to drive John Glenn to events. And it still blows my mind that this man who sat in Friendship 7 and orbited the Earth was sitting next to me in my Ford Temple. I mean, this is an American hero who literally reached for the stars and got there. I got to serve as a cabinet secretary for Governor Deval Patrick, and you all know his life story. It proves the American dream exists, and he never lost sight of all those continuing to reach for it. And there are many others in my life who've proven this point about our potential for progress. People like my wife and my daughters and friends and colleagues, but no one more than my parents. My mom is from Cleveland, and during college, she went away on a foreign exchange program to Spain. 9 months later, she came back married to my 19-year-old Spanish father and pregnant with me. And I love telling that story to parents who have kids going on foreign exchange programs. Yeah, it really freaks them out. But it all worked out. Even though it was hard at first, my mom had to drop out of college to take care of me. My dad didn't speak English, and he'd never been to college. But he worked his way from laying bricks in a city sewer system to becoming a successful small businessman and a proud American citizen. My mom went back to college when I was in high school and became a public school teacher. I remember the teachers' union. Together, they put all 3 sons through college. And this year, if everything goes okay, against all odds, they will celebrate their 48th wedding anniversary, which is incredible if you think about it, right? So through that example, and just through the way they parented us, they always encouraged us to set high expectations for ourselves. And they instilled in us a belief that with hard work and a little help, reaching those expectations was actually possible. But those values aren't unique to me and my family. Those are our values, American values. And no one has reached higher, worked harder, and accomplished more together than the incredible people of Massachusetts. Think about it. We started the Revolutionary War. We were the first to establish a public school and a public park and And since we're standing in one, I'll say a public library, right? We were the first to recognize one's right to marry whoever you love. The first to make universal health insurance coverage a reality. And the list goes on and on and on. This is who we are. We have always been a leader. But we are not leading right now. Not under Governor Baker. I have been frustrated by how little our governor's accomplished. But I've been much more frustrated by how little he has even tried. He's way too satisfied with the status quo. He's too often sitting on the sidelines when we need him, and it's not good enough. It's not ever good enough. It's particularly not good enough now with a president taking us backwards every single day. We need leadership. By the way, there's a difference between leadership and popularity. It is easy to be popular when you don't do anything and you never take a stand, and your whole approach to the job is one of being cautious instead of courageous. We need leadership. We need a governor who's going to stand up and fight for the people of Massachusetts. There are consequences to a lack of leadership. There are way too many working families across the state being left behind, and way too little is being done to help them. People forget this about our governor. He's also been terrible about standing up against hate and discrimination. Long before Donald Trump, he failed to do so time and time again. He ordered state police to detain immigrants. He opposed Syrian refugees resettling in Massachusetts. He defended southern states flying Confederate flags at their state capitals, the very symbols of hate and bigotry and intolerance that we saw on display in Charlottesville. And he stayed silent on transgender rights legislation, only signing it when forced to do so and doing it behind closed doors. I see a couple of Maura Healey t-shirts on here. Our great Attorney General had to hold a bill signing ceremony so that people whose rights were protected could celebrate the protection of their rights because Charlie Baker wouldn't do it. In my view, it's not okay. It's not who we are, and it is definitely not leadership. Now, you all may remember that Governor Baker's case for being governor wasn't about leadership. It was that he was going to be a good manager. Well, he has failed at that as well. And I know about good management. When I worked for Governor Patrick as the Secretary of Administration and Finance, successfully oversaw the state budget during much tougher times, during the Great Recession. And we did so successfully while increasing investment to record levels in important areas like public education and infrastructure. And we achieved the highest bond ratings in state history during those times. Governor Baker is struggling to manage the budget during a period of economic growth. He continues to cut funding for programs that desperately need it. And for the first time in 30 years, one of the rating agencies just downgraded the state's bond rating under Charlie Baker. And the reason they gave is he hasn't followed the responsible policies we put in place when I was there. And this is supposed to be his core competence and is literally his entire case for being governor. As CEO of a health insurance company that covered low-income people in the Medicaid program, we turned our company around. We grew it by multiple times. We were considered a leader in addressing the opioid epidemic. So I know about good management. And we can do a better job managing state government. I'm certain of that. But here's the thing. Unlike Governor Baker, I believe managing government well is necessary, but not sufficient. Government is our instrument, not our enemy. It's the vehicle through which we empower each other and support each other and protect each other. And it is not good enough to simply accept the world the way it exists and try to manage it better. We need a governor who's going to see the way the world should be and take us to that place. Let's aim high. Let's aim high. Let's be us. Let's give working families across this state a better deal, an economy that works for everybody, not just those at the top. How about a living wage, paid family leave, affordable housing, and higher education, and child care, an issue I feel passionately about? How about this crazy idea? A transportation system that people can actually depend on to get to work on time, right? Let's aim high when it comes to our dysfunctional healthcare system and implement a single-payer system that's simpler, cheaper, and will do a better job keeping people healthy. And that's coming from a former health insurance CEO who says we need to get rid of health insurance companies. Let's aim high when it comes to the opioid epidemic, which is ruining people's lives and tearing families and communities apart across this entire state. Let's provide people who are addicted with the treatment they need instead of treating them like criminals. Let's aim high when it comes to other big challenges we face, like climate change, the biggest threat to our planet, and our broken criminal justice system, which is jailing way too many for way too long at too high a cost. And more important than any of that, let's aim high when it comes to how we treat people. We need a governor who sees the value and potential of every single person, who respects everyone, who doesn't need coaching and pressure and second chances to get it right. And I want you to know that if I'm your governor, it won't matter what color you are, what your sexual orientation is, what you believe, whether you're from Boxborough or from Acton. I had to do that. Whether you just came to this country, whether you have a disability, whether you're a Syrian refugee, whether you're transgender, I see you, I believe in you, and as your governor, I will work for you. We have always done better when we see our differences as strengths, and when we recognize that beneath those differences are many more similarities. When we treat each other with respect and dignity and love. So let's do it. Let's aim high. If we do, I know we can build a better future for everybody. That's the lesson my parents taught me. It's the American story. It's what the people of Massachusetts have proven over and over again. And it's what we should expect from our government and from ourselves. And that's why I'm running for governor. I'm not a career politician just trying to get to my next elected office. I'm not going to make whatever political calculation I need to make just to win at whatever cost. That's not why I'm in this. I'm in this because I care about people, and I want to make a difference in people's lives. And if that's the type of candidate you want, if you believe we need to aim high, if you want Massachusetts to actually be a leader again, then I really hope to earn your support, and I hope you will join our grassroots campaign. Thank you very much. And before I take questions, we have helpfully brought a few things in the event you are interested in joining our grassroots campaign. So there are palm cards, which if we haven't passed them around yet, we will pass around. That have, oh, here they are. There's information about the campaign on here. There's also a website. There's a lot of great information about positions I've taken, media interviews, other stuff on the website. I'd encourage you to check it out. Take pride in the fact, try to be very thoughtful about positions I take. And I think there's a big difference if you look at what's on our website versus the other Democratic candidates in terms of the depth of what we put out. There's also an email address on there. I am the first to admit to you that I don't know everything. One of the neat things about being a candidate for governor is I'm meeting tons of people and learning a lot. If there's something we don't talk about today that you care about or you think I need to know about, please send me an email and let me know. We have a sign-in sheet. If you sign up on it, it doesn't mean you swear to God you're going to support me. It just means you'll be on our email list and can keep up with the campaign. And if I have earned your support today, we have pledge cards, and I'd ask you to fill one out and give it back to a member of my team so we know you're on our team. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any easy questions you have. I'm a little worried about this group. Yes, ma'am. What is your name?
Jan.
Hi, Jan. Thanks for being here.
I'd like to know your thoughts about privatization of state services.
So I oppose privatization of core public functions. There are some things that aren't a core public function or responsibility that it makes sense. The T, let's just take the T as an example. And let me say, when I was Governor Patrick's Secretary of Administration and Finance during the recession, I had all kinds of people come in and pitch in privatization stuff to me. And I'm very skeptical of it for a number of reasons, but primarily because it necessarily separates the responsibility for delivering a service or government responsibility from the publicly elected officials who are accountable to us for delivering it. And we just saw this in action from Governor Baker, who is continuing to want to privatize certainly the T, our public education system, and other elements of state government. In this most recent weather event that we've had, I actually went to the T board meeting on Monday to express what I hear from people all over the state. The number one complaint is with the reliability of the T. And as I mentioned, I've been riding it recently, and so I went to share a couple stories and to express my dismay about the fact that things like the commuter rail, which is the biggest privatization contract in state government, run by Keolis, had a 35% service level on Friday last week, not yesterday, the week before. I finished complaining, and they went on to basically do a victory lap about how well they all performed and have been performing. They didn't even talk about the commuter rail until the very end of the meeting. They mentioned, oh yeah, and Keolis isn't doing a great job, and we need to talk to them. It's like they don't even see it as their responsibility. And the truth is there are plenty of problems with the subway system and the bus system and all the other service. But the commuter rail has been particularly bad, and they just keep pointing fingers as if it's not their problem. Governor Baker recently blamed Keolis, and he's upset with Keolis. Well, you are, Governor, accountable for delivering this core service, which not only our economy is fundamentally dependent upon, but directly impacts people's quality of lives in a way unlike almost any other public service. So enough scapegoating. We need to take responsibility. I am not in favor of privatization of core public services like that. And I think we need a governor that's actually going to be honest about the fact we need to invest more in our transportation system to get it to where it needs to be, instead of having a plan, let alone making the types of transformational investments that will move us forward, which aren't even on his radar. His current plan is we don't need more money, we just need to manage better, which means jacking up fares on riders, cutting service, particularly in underserved communities, both of which just drive more people to the streets, which is the exact opposite of what we need. More privatization, which for all the reasons I talked about is a bad approach. And as a result of all that great management, congratulations, you're welcome. The system's going to be in a state of good repair in 15 years. That is literally his plan. It's totally unacceptable. We need a sense of urgency around this. We're 45th in the country when it comes to the condition of our transportation infrastructure, 47th in commute times. And if anything is going to take Massachusetts backwards from this great spurt of growth we've had, it's going to be our transportation system. And we need leadership, and we don't have it right now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. What is your name?
Ginger.
Hi, Ginger. Thanks for being here.
Your position on gas lines, on more gas lines, extending gas lines?
So the question was what my position is on extending natural gas pipeline infrastructure. I oppose it. I think, as I mentioned in my remarks, climate change is the biggest threat to our planet. This is yet another area where we don't have leadership from our current governor. You got to look at the difference between what he says and what he does. He gets a lot of credit because he criticized Donald Trump pulling out of the Paris Agreement. Right here at home, he supports expansion of natural gas pipeline infrastructure. He's slow walking our transition to renewable energy sources, which we should be accelerating. I think we should be the first state in the nation to adopt carbon pricing, which all the economists agree is a really important and critical incentive, which will help accelerate our transition to a true clean energy economy. Governor Baker, our biggest emitting sector right now is the transportation sector. Really no plan for doing anything in that sector. In fact, my understanding is other states in the region wanted to come together, just like we did in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, where we have been successful in working with other states to reduce power plant emissions, to do something similar together in the transportation sector, and Governor Baker wouldn't sign on. So this is the type of non-leadership we have on one of the most important issues of our time. We should be a leader on this. And beyond all the urgency we need to have around reducing emissions for the sake of our planet and our state, this is also a huge opportunity for us to grow thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs right here in Massachusetts if we're intentional about it. Governor Patrick used to say, we can make the world our customer. You can hear him saying it, right? In the clean energy sector. And he's right. We have all the assets here in this state to be a world leader in the clean energy sector, just like we are in the life sciences industry, if we have leadership and are intentional about it. And right now, we don't have that. I want to provide that leadership. This is a big issue. It's a priority, and I would get it done. Yes, ma'am. What's your name?
My name is Betty Ketty. I'm from Shirley, Massachusetts.
Thanks for being here, Betty. My grandma's name is Betty, and I love
Okay.
and I love my grandma.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the children that are in the DCF system.
Yeah.
Of the Department of Children and Families. And this was a problem, I think, when Patrick was governor. It was not an easy thing to fix, but that was one of the criticisms, I think, that Chuck Baker made of it.
Yep.
And he's been getting some criticism, and he's got things on the go, which will be well, but it's gonna take time. And when you just said it's gonna take 15 years to fix something, I'm wondering if you think he's going to change it fast enough, or what you would do to make things better.
Yeah, so in case you didn't hear Betty's question, it was about the Department of Children and Families, which has been a problem. It's one of the things Charlie Baker said he was going to fix when he was running in his last campaign. And there are questions about whether he's actually done so or not, to summarize the question. And I think he's not done enough with respect to the Department of Children and Families. I actually hear from parents, foster parents, and those waiting for adoption out on the campaign trail. I've met a number of people who say they can't get attention from their assigned caseworker because they're overburdened. And there's a huge backlog in the department in a number of different areas, including making adoptions happen, I hear from parents who are really struggling to deal with kids. Look, this is among the most vulnerable populations in our state, right? I mean, these are abused and neglected children. And one of the ways, most important ways, I think we collectively need to measure ourselves is how well a job we're doing at taking care of those who are most vulnerable, which we do together through government. I mean, government is the place of last resort, that safety net for abused and neglected children, for people with disabilities, for the elderly, and for the most vulnerable among us. And we need to, this is very hard. I'm not minimizing how hard it is to make sure we stabilize the lives of every single child who's been abused and neglected. It's complicated, I get that. But this is another area where we need to have a sense of urgency and be committed to making the investment we need to make to take care of those kids. And, you know, Charlie Baker said he was going to go in and fix this. The Office of the Child Advocate issued a report recently that said there are more children in the care and custody of DCF dying under the Baker administration each year than under Deval Patrick. Suzanne Bump just did an audit, our state auditor just did an audit, saying there were a number of cases where the Department of Children and Families learned that kids in their custody had been sexually assaulted and didn't report that to law enforcement. That Suzanne Bump found that there are a lot of kids getting injured who are in the care and custody of DCF, but DCF doesn't know about, but could easily learn about the injuries by mining the Max Health data, which has the records, the health records of a lot of these kids. So the auditor's report was pretty critical. There are clear signs that even though Governor Baker has invested some more money and hired some more social workers and is planning to do some other stuff within DCF, you know, he's a data guy, and he says, you know, look at the results. The results don't look so good. And this is an area we need to have a sense of urgency, and it's never going to be perfect, but people need to know that their governor and government is doing everything they can to take care of those most vulnerable among us. Yes, ma'am. What is your name?
Hi, I'm Maura Flynn. I'm from Maynard.
Hi, Maura.
I have a healthcare question for you. You know, what we're hearing about is the opioid crisis and the mental health crisis,
Yep.
to the exclusion of all the other healthcare crises in Massachusetts and the United States. how can we be more equitable to other organizations that are pushing their causes, for instance, cancer prevention and long-term chronic diseases, environmental diseases? How can we do this? Because nobody's listening to any of the other groups, or, not in a way that is effective, let me say, because when you start to talk about any other disease, no, we're worried about the opioid crisis. No, we're worried about suicide prevention. How can we do this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Someone else told me today that we were the first state in the nation to have a public health department and invest in public health. And it is an area that has been underinvested in Massachusetts for a number of years. And that happened under the Patrick administration also. As we were going through the worst fiscal crisis the state had ever faced, we made a lot of hard decisions. And there are a lot of positive success stories. Look at the anti-tobacco campaign as one example where there's been significant investment, not just in Massachusetts, but around the country. Look at I just saw the movie last night, Post. You get reminded watching that movie, everybody's smoking a cigarette, right? I mean, you don't see that anymore. We've been hugely successful as one example. We do need to invest in public health in a number of different areas. And the federal government plays a big role, and we should be worried about the direction they're going there. With mental illness and addiction, there is a difference to the extent that in the area of behavioral health and mental health, our healthcare system has largely been reactive, except for the public health initiative where we do a lot of the investments to address the issue on the front end so people don't have the health problems to begin with, which is smart and rational, right? So we should be investing more in that. But our healthcare system mainly is set up to deal with people who are sick. But it hasn't been set up to deal with people who are sick from a mental illness and addiction perspective. We haven't had enough resource there in the same way we have in physical health, in the way we do with physical health conditions. And so we're playing catch up in the area of mental health and addiction. And we do need to invest more in those areas of our health treatment system. I have personal experience with, my family does, my sister-in-law is bipolar. I've personally seen how much my family has had to sacrifice to take care of her when the system woefully failed her. I have met many people who, over the course of this campaign and in my old job as CEO of a health insurance company that covered people in the Medicaid program, the number one health condition of any health condition, physical or mental health of our members, was addiction. I've met many people and heard lots of stories about how it is ruining people's lives and tearing families apart. And we did a lot of stuff in my health insurance company I was very proud of. A lot of different initiatives to try to get at this. The Boston Globe named our company one of 46 game-changing companies in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in any industry in 2016 because of our innovative work in addressing the opioid epidemic. So we do need a level of urgency around mental health treatment and addiction treatment. I take your point and agree, we need to invest in public health also. The more we're able to do on the front end, think of how much money we have saved collectively and how many lives have been saved and extended thanks to the anti-tobacco initiatives, right? I mean, the return on investment of that is unquantifiable. And there are a number of other areas where we need to be smart. We don't have unlimited resources, but we need to make it a priority to be smart about investing in the preventative work that's going to have a return on investment in terms of people's health and lives and taxpayer money. Yes, sir. I love your pin.
Yes. That's why I found it here.
Yeah. For everyone who can't see, it's a J. Gonzalez for governor pin, and there are more right over there. We're gonna try to get Pat to wear one. What is your name?
Bob Ferrara from Acton. And following up on that healthcare thing, you mentioned being for single payer,
Yeah.
which I think is incredible. I love it. Just being on the Romney care.
Yeah.
But my question, because I don't know the healthcare industry like you do, is how do you do it just in a state? I mean, because the healthcare simple for us to do.
Yes, and I think if any state can, we are best positioned to do so. Let me take it back a step and then answer your question. And I'm going to apologize in advance. My campaign manager who's in the back constantly tells me I take too long to answer questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit here because this is an important issue.
You have 13 minutes.
I'm not going to talk that long. Don't worry. My starting point on this is a belief that access to healthcare is a human right. It's a fundamental right. Every single person should have access to the healthcare services they need to be as healthy as they can be, period. And right now, our system does not provide that access to everyone. It's also way too complicated for people to navigate, way too expensive. It is not financially sustainable on the track we're on, and the quality of the care, honestly, isn't as good as it should be. We're great. If you need to send a sick child to Boston Children's Hospital, we're the best in the world. But on regular stuff, we're just okay. Our infant mortality rate is not as good as other countries. So I really believe the best way to get to a simpler, cheaper, financially sustainable system that actually works better for people and provides better health care and is easier for people to navigate is a single payer system. Now, having said that, single payer is a means. It's not an end in and of itself. You could do single payer in a way that doesn't get to the outcomes we're looking for. I think that while I'm very grateful, we got 2 other Democratic candidates in this race who also support going to a single payer system, and that's great. One factor I would ask you to consider when I come back to you at the end and ask you for your support is I'm the only candidate in this race that has experience in the healthcare industry. I was the chair of the board of the Health Connector for 3.5 years and oversaw the successful implementation of Massachusetts health reform in that role. And I was CEO of a health insurance company for almost 4 years that covered low-income people in the Medicaid program. I know the healthcare industry. I know how dysfunctional it is. It is based on the premises of functioning market. It has none of the attributes of a functioning market. None. And I know the people in the industry. I think I've got credibility with a lot of the leaders in our industry who take a lot of pride, justifiably so, as a progressive group of leaders in our healthcare industry here in Massachusetts, which is one of the reasons I think we can do this, take a lot of pride in the fact that they have sat around that table together before when we did universal health insurance coverage in Massachusetts and all made some sacrifice to figure out how we get to that better place for the people in Massachusetts. I think, based on my experience, I am best positioned to thoughtfully make this happen in a way that is going to work best for the people in Massachusetts and get the outcomes we need. And, you know, one example of there are many things we could talk about here. But one example of a lot of the useless cost and waste that's a function of a multi-payer system that we could cut out that would enable us to save money to invest in public health or mental health services or reduce costs for people. I was very proud of a lot of what we did in my health insurance company in terms of coordinating care for members and the work we did on the opioid epidemic, et cetera. But most of what we did was just facilitate a bunch of useless transactions that added no value. So we had a whole team of people that would go out to every single doctor and hospital and negotiate contracts with them. Different payment rates than the other health insurance companies are doing, different incentives, asking them to do different things. Then we have a whole team of people that would take all those contracts and input them into our IT system so that we would pay all the bills to all of them correctly. And we'd inevitably screw some of that up, so we had a whole team of people that would work to fix all those screw-ups. And every health insurance plan has all those teams of people, and every doctor and hospital has teams of people to deal with all those other teams of people. I read a report somewhere that Toronto General Hospital has 4 billing people, and Mass General has 450. Wow. Yeah. This not only is a complete waste, it also is counterproductive because all these different health insurance companies are telling all these providers to do different things and incentivizing them in different ways. And even though they provide a knee replacement to one person, they're going to get paid a different amount depending on who that person is and what their coverage is. It is ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I do think because of the progressive leadership in this state, because we already have almost full universal coverage in this state, unlike Vermont, which was further away, and so for them it was a bigger cost to get to single payer. I really believe we can do this in a way that gets better outcomes and it actually saves us money overall, if we're thoughtful about it. Yes, sir, and we met at Kate Donahue's holiday party.
Very good, you're
Yes.
amazing.
Remind me of your name?
I'm Joris from Acton. I'm going to give you one more minute on the healthcare thing. Because I've asked this all the candidates, because when I talk to people about healthcare,
Kevin, this isn't my fault. He's asking me to tell you.
they all say, just make the free market system work and it'll all be good. And that end of discussion. And you almost need the 2 seconds answer that it's a bunch of BS. And that it doesn't work that way. And because that kills off any discussion about single payer immediately when they have that perspective.
Yeah.
And a lot of people look at it that way.
So when I said that our system is based on the premise it's a functioning market but has none of the attributes of functioning market, here's an example. So like when you go to buy a Coke or a soda, right? You know how Coke tastes, you know how Pepsi tastes. You make an informed decision. You might be willing to pay a little bit more for one over the other, right? That's the way a market is supposed to work. In healthcare, first of all, consumers aren't price sensitive because you don't pay the full cost. We're becoming more and more price sensitive as we pay higher copays and deductibles and premiums and everything. But when you go to consume healthcare services, first of all, you have no idea what it costs to begin with, and you don't care as much because you're not paying the full cost. You're going to pay a $25 copay no matter where you go, right? So that's one reason. The other is it's really hard to assess value, right? You don't know whether hospital A is better than hospital B. It's a very hard thing to get your arms around. Or Dr. A is better than Dr. B. You hear what people say, you get recommendations, but you can't really feel it or taste it yourself and assess it yourself. So it's hard to assess value. There are also monopolies, which are getting worse and worse on the provider side. We've got these systems who basically have so much market leverage they can dictate their price to the payers. There are all these different, there's more, I could go on. There are all these different ways in which it just is not a functional market. And the consequence is we aren't getting as good a quality as we should get, and the cost is way more than it should be. And I really believe if we go to a single payer system and just cut through all of that, and we've got one payer who's negotiating on all of our behalf and covering everybody in the same way with the same benefits, it would radically simplify our system, and it would be a recognition of the fact that it's not a functioning market, and we shouldn't treat it that way. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Renee D'Argento, Capital, I met you at.
Oh, Renee, yes, I remember.
Hi.
I actually saw Tom this morning at another event.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but I have to do a follow-up on this healthcare. And it really addresses the political problem with passing single payer, which has been, put into, the legislative agenda for years.
Yeah.
So the Health Policy Commission keeps on issuing reports every year that basically almost blames the vulnerable people for overusing services and all that stuff. There's a lot of emergency room visits and everything like that, in addition to the problems in our system.
Yeah.
And the problem is access. With Mass Health and even with Medicare, there are a lot of providers that don't take patients.
Yep. Yeah.
The other thing is that they're always tinkering around the edges with cost, but they really don't get at the real problem. And you say how progressive we are in Massachusetts. Basically, it hasn't passed because we're not as progressive as we think. The House is very conservative. So how would you try to take steps to move them forward to encourage them to, get this done?
Yeah. So thank you for your question, Renee. And this is a very similar question to what Monica asked me a couple nights ago in Lexington. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So the bottom line is, people say, I don't know if it was here earlier, but someone said today at something I was at earlier today. You know, it seems like Charlie Baker, you know, people say he's working well with the legislature. Well, it's really easy to get along with legislature when you don't ask them to do anything, right? It's a very comfortable place for everybody. And if you have a governor who's actually providing leadership and pushing to get an agenda passed, which we did in a number of areas in the Patrick administration, and we did successfully. Yes, sometimes it will create healthy tension. And it's important how you approach it. You don't want to just blast the legislature. I really believe if you approach the legislature with an agenda and say, this is where we need to go, and you provide the leadership of actually listening to the interests of legislators and other stakeholders and constituents and figuring out what's on their minds and what their concerns are or what they want to accomplish, but you keep pushing for where we need to go and working to figure out what that path is that's going to get us as close to that place as possible. We can get a lot done with this legislature because we've done it. The Health Policy Commission never even used to exist. It's at least working within the healthcare world that exists today to make progress in reducing costs. And I negotiated that legislation on behalf of Governor Patrick with the legislature and other key stakeholders, and that got done, as did pension reform and a lot of other hard stuff. And it takes a governor that's actually trying to make a difference and move an agenda forward. And single payer is a huge priority of mine. I'm campaigning on it. If elected, I will consider it a mandate to do it. And I believe, based on my record of working with the legislature and other key stakeholders to get big things done on behalf of Governor Patrick a number of different times on a number of different pieces of legislation, I am confident that even though every legislator and I may not agree on every single issue, we will make progress on these issues. We will make single payer happen. And even if we don't accomplish every single thing that I want to get accomplished as governor, we will accomplish a lot. And it's very different than the governor we have right now, who isn't going to accomplish anything because he isn't even trying. You're not going to accomplish anything if you don't even try. And the whole reason I'm running for governor is because I want us to aim high again and actually take on a lot of these big challenges we face and do something about it. And I believe this is another differentiator, I would argue, between myself and the other Democratic candidates. Both great people who I've gotten to know through this campaign, Bob Massey and Seti Moore and I spent a lot of quality time together. And there are a lot of similarities in terms of what we want to accomplish. I'm the only candidate in the race that actually has leadership experience in state government getting big things done. And that should matter, because it's not going to matter what we all want to do unless we actually do it. And I've been there. I have a record of working successfully with the legislature to get big things done. So I'd ask you to consider that. And I'm told I only have a minute, so I want to wrap up by asking for your help and support. And I want to start by asking a favor. This is to try to motivate you to support my campaign, okay? I'm going to be transparent about that. Because I know one question that wasn't asked is, how are you going to beat Charlie Baker? He's so popular. He's really tall. Next time a Democrat says to you, you know what, I'm fine with Charlie Baker, I want you to ask them why. Ask them why. And I will guarantee their answer won't be, he's really doing a great job fixing our education system or fixing public transportation or anything like that. It'll probably be something like, he seems nice, and I'm really glad he isn't a crazy Republican like exists in other parts of the country. At which point, I'd like you to ask the following question. When did the measure of whether our governor's doing a good job become that he's nice and isn't crazy? Right? We face a lot of big challenges that we need to make progress on. We talked about a lot of them today. It's one thing when someone's asked, how do you feel about Charlie Baker? 70% of people say, he's fine. Polling shows no one's passionate about him. It's a different thing to be asked, who are you going to vote for? And that's what elections are about. And I am convinced that in this election, when people are presented with a choice between a governor who's made no meaningful progress on any issue that affects people's lives in a positive way, and isn't even trying, and has been terrible about standing up for people, versus someone who desperately wants to do so and has the leadership experience to deliver on it, they're going to choose that. As long as they're informed about the choice. There's going to be a huge Democratic turnout next year in the election. There is no reason we should not win this election next year. It will all come down to whether people are informed about the choice, and that's where you come in. And I'm asking for your help. I want you to join our campaign, put a bumper sticker on your car, tell your friends why this race is so important, send them our website, knock on doors, make phone calls, go to your caucuses next month, run to be a delegate to support our campaign, go to vote for the group of people who run to be delegates to support our campaign. Whatever you can do, that's what's going to make the difference. And I'm asking you to join our team. My commitment to you, if you do, is this will be a campaign that you'll be proud to support based on what we're standing for, and it's a campaign you'll be proud to support in terms of how we conduct ourselves. Because at the end of the day, it's important to me that I'm able to hold my head high and to be able to look all of you in the eye and allow you to hold your head high too. And I want you to join us, and next year at this time, hopefully we'll all be hanging out at an inauguration party together. All right? Thank you very much.